Hello, everyone, and welcome to the State of Queer 2021. This is a panel talking all about LGBTQIA plus representation and news within the gaming industry. Before we start, we acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of this land, on which we work and pay our respects to the Indigenous elders past, present, and emerging. Sovereignty has never been ceded. It was and will always be Aboriginal land. Now, this year we have a fantastic selection of panelists. Before we start, I am Kaiju. Let us get on the introductions and go around. So take us away, Fae.
Say selection as if you turned up at a bakery and went like, oh, that one, that one, that one. Hello, my name is Faye. Wait, was I meant to do more than that?
Do you want to talk about what you do?
Sure. So I am a games academic and developer, currently working on a mobile horror game.
Nice. Jam?
Hi, I'm Jam. I am currently in the final weeks of the game design degree at RMIT. I've done little game dev thingies forever and decided to formalize it, and am now actually getting into game journalism instead with that degree.
Nice.
Yeah, so you can see me writing for Games Hub coming up, which is a cool new space for Australian games.
Elliot?
Hi, I'm Elliot. I am a writer and narrative designer. I don't think what I'm working on is going to be announced by the time this is aired, but we can edit it in later. I wasn't around last year, but I wasn't in the games industry last year. I've kind of just been speedrunning this, so nice to meet you all, and I will be here to talk about video games.
We all have to start somewhere. And Jess?
Yes, hello. I am Jess. I am a bunch of things. A games journalist, writer, researcher, I don't know, diversity consultant, inclusion person. I recently started actually properly working in the games industry this year as a user experience researcher, so that's been pretty cool. And yeah, I'm here again, me every year.
Every year.
Yeah.
For folks who haven't been to a State of Queer before, Faye and Jess and myself are essentially the usual crew for these sorts of things. Faye collects all the information, and Jess plays all the games, but it's...
It's good.
Do my
I've done
best.
neither of those things.
we all try to play games. And yes, I am Kaiju. I am a streamer, blogger, queer activist in gaming space, and I'm about to release my first proper game in about 20 days after you see this video, so not too far. So here in Stay Queer, we go through all of the news that has come through over the last 12 months regarding the games industry and representation and anything to do with queer advocacy within it. So a little bit of housekeeping. There will be some spoilers for some games we may talk about, but they will be very minor, and we will say the name very clearly before we start talking about those. And content warnings, we are talking about the games industry, so there will be some general content warnings about transphobia, homophobia, all those sorts of things. We will try and keep it pretty light. There will also be some swears because this is the games industry, and I don't think any of us can get through it without a few swears.
I might try. I might try. I think I'm going to take you up on that. We're going to see how long I last. This will be fun.
The trick is to get through it without any tears.
All right. So we are going to go through industry and then representation. This is the good, the bad, and the medium, all combined into one. We do not overly criticize here. We do talk about why these things are bad. We will not be naming names or anything else like that, just to keep things nice and safe. But I have a list here and we'll just go through it from top to bottom. So, starting off, the Five Nights at Freddy's creator, who retired amid some controversy. You will see a lot of bunny at rabbit ears from me during the course of the evening. Who wants to talk about this one? They don't
I don't think anyone wants to talk about this, but
Okay, so for those who don't know, the creator of Five Nights at Freddy's was found out and quite direct about it, about donating money to anti-queer groups and anti-queer politicians.
that's not half of it. They were also politicians that didn't believe in, let's say, some rights that other groups should also have, and a whole bunch of things. This was about June this year, by the way.
Yeah, this
for anyone wondering about the time frame.
And if people do want to know, we will have articles about this, and we'll all be in the chat through this. So if people want to know the articles, we can link to articles as well. So yeah, that was a bit of a shocker for June, because the Five Nights at Freddy's group does have a very passionate fan base, and people were not entirely happy to see what was happening.
It was really interesting. I mean, I've never actually even played one of the games, and I can't say I'm even slightly interested in the fandom, but I do know it skews very young and online, and I think a lot of people were really, really upset about this. What really skewed me out, though, was I'm pretty sure after this all came out, and I should fact check this before I say it, but I won't. The creator posted something to Reddit or a forum, basically being like, "Look, obviously I did this thing. I fully confess to it, but I don't know. Should I stay in the fandom? Why don't we let you, the members of the Five Nights at Freddy's subreddit, decide for me?" Which just felt very. I don't want to point to like 1980 Fortnite, but I feel like there's a certain kind of harvesting children into your claws that feels very, very uncomfortable to me, and I can't say it really did affect me.
There's a certain very large company in the games industry that did exactly the same thing, and that company is also on our list tonight. So yeah, that wasn't great. So
I mean, yeah, we can jump into talking about that now. I mean, it was basically the same situation. As CEO, was this like a week ago, a month ago, 3 months?
I think we're talking about different things. This is a different one.
Interesting.
We'll get to that one when we get to that one. So a brief mention on, I'm going to call this a medium one. There's a certain game that was highly anticipated that ended up on our last 2 or 3 State of Queer panels because of specific transphobia and stuff. And then it fell into total obscurity. And if you don't know what we're talking about Cyberpunk 2077, which was honestly one of the most hyped games I have ever seen in existence. And within 6 months, no one remembered its name. And
I think everyone does still have a friend, though, that says, "Oh, but it's good now. You should try it. They fixed everything."
Yeah, I will put the caveat in there that the reason people forgot about it was not because of the transphobia, was not because of the ableism, was not because of anything else like that. It was just too broken to be played. But
it also just wasn't a very interesting game to play.
Yeah. Which is sad because I really love the genre. Okay, let's move on. So Twitch has been a fun one over the last months. For those who don't know, there's been ongoing issue with hate raids, bot raids, all sorts of stuff, but it's incredibly toxic, predominantly towards marginalized communities, people of color, and queer people. This has been happening forever. Like, this has been happening since Twitch started. I've been streaming on there for like 4 or 5 years, and it's been since day one for me. But Twitch tags came in, so people were allowed to pick tags that more represented themselves within marginalized communities, and those got targeted, which was not great. As someone who stopped streaming because of it all, it's not great. recently they have put in some more verification features. I've yet to see how well that's worked. Because
it's very recent that they did that. But before that, they actually announced that they were suing two of the ringleaders of some of this raiding, which was a little interesting to me because they announced this and they did this before adding in like the ability to disable people posting in chat if they haven't like verified an email, which is very interesting. I don't really know what to read into that, but it's certainly something.
They went after the bot creators. They went after a couple of bot creators. Honestly, I'm gonna wait and see how that goes. I'm moving platforms anyway, just because. But yeah, Twitch is Twitch. Hold what opinions you want of it. It is a place where people share themselves and share their love of games, and that is the important thing for us.
I found it just quickly very interesting that they added these tags, and then there's a very obvious history of people who are, raiding particular tags, where they're turning up in a stream of that tag and then getting kicked within 2 minutes, and then going to the next one and getting kicked, and they spend all day doing that, which is very visible in terms of data.
Yeah, right? It also doesn't help that they removed auto hosting, which small streamers, especially marginalized streamers, have been using to share each other's channels, which has been really important. But they left the raid function, which is what the bot system has been using to cause the problems in the first place. So, yeah, that's that. Okay, we're going to get this one out of the way. We're going to move on to Activision Blizzard stuff. This is big. This is ongoing. This is a lot of problematic stuff. Who wants to talk about that? Faye, I think you're probably in the best position to talk about this stuff.
Just because I have been in my classes, I feel it's very important with students to go through industry news and whatnot. So the last year for me has been every week we've got to talk about it again because something more has happened just over and over. But in terms of let's say queer news, there's obviously so many things that went down with the mistreatment of women in their company. Right, this is very clear. This is very, very vocal. There was also a lot of information that came out about, for example, the dead naming of trans staff, right? Which is kind of why we needed to bring it up in this, because it does relate to that. I mean, we could spend the entire panel just going through the news of this one company and we wouldn't have enough time. I will note, however, that as of last week, I believe they settled for their lawsuit in California, and they settled for $25 million. I believe their CEO's bonus last year was $125 million, so they essentially settled for 1/5 of the top employees' pay.
Yeah, I remember that one because that's one of the lawsuits.
Yeah, it's only one, and I think it was one of the, I don't want to say less serious ones, but I think it's I can't imagine they're going to walk away from this as a whole company, or it definitely is fucking awful that they can just get away with $25 million, but they're not gonna get away unscathed, I don't think.
Yeah, there's a lot. Activision Blizzard has been lots of big talking points over the years for this panel. In general, we're gonna say a lot is going on over there. There's a lot of rough stuff, and we're gonna move on from that one because we've got a lot to talk about. Let's talk about a company that did something really good. So Gearbox threatened to move their studios out of Texas after the anti-trans bills were picking up there. So they were just getting ready to up and leave. which would have been a lot of income, a lot of tax money for Texas. So, you know, sometimes the companies do the right thing.
Yeah, there's I think Austin in Texas is becoming or has become something of a tech hub, and I know there are quite a few gaming companies there. I think the real impact of that bill is going to be kind of, the next 5-10 years. People aren't going to want to move their companies there, or contractors or people who get headhunted, they're not going to want to accept a job that's in Austin, Texas, if it means potentially risking, being exposed to more bills like this. I think it's really cool that I hope it wasn't just Gearbox, but it's really cool that they did this. But yeah, it's a really interesting study in kind of how these technology capitals are evolving in the States.
Yeah, that whole state has been a very hot topic when it comes to human rights removals. A lot of human rights removals. So at this point, it's kind of telling which companies want to stick around and which would rather just move somewhere safer.
I think Gearbox's comment that they made at the hearing for that bill was kind of exactly that, Elliot. They said, hey, we can't hire the best people if you do this, so we just will have to go elsewhere. Like, this isn't exactly a threat, it's just a simple truth of what you are pushing here. And there's nothing that kind of helps more with these kind of choices than saying what you are doing means that we cannot make money, which means you cannot get money from us, so logically it is in your best interest not to.
Yeah. And when you come up against that dude bro argument of, I don't care who makes my games as long as it's made by the best people, if you're actively excluding the best people from the industry, you can't make the best game.
I think it's interesting though that their argument, at least publicly, was this is bad for our bottom line. Okay, I think it's interesting that is the position they took. I didn't read any press releases from them, but usually you'd expect a company to at least put on a socially progressive face when they talk about these issues. I'm not the biggest fan of Gearbox. I know they've had a history of not treating their employees wonderfully, but yeah, I'm surprised that was the public approach they took.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Let's see. We have one about Microsoft. Who wanted to talk about that one? I'm not quite sure.
I can't see the spreadsheet from here. I'm just vibing.
So it was simply that Microsoft tweeted, I believe it was something like, beating the game on the lowest difficulty is still beating the game. And you may wonder, well, why the hell is this particular piece of information in a queer representation panel? And it is because, and there's some really good articles about this by like Waypoint and whatnot, or what are they called now? Irrelevant. Waypoint, where they were talking about the history of like bro gaming culture, like, aren't these women hot? Oh, you're a real man if you can kill this boss. Blood and gore, which was a marketing tactic which was originally pushed by, to a lesser extent, Sega, but then mainly Microsoft and Sony. So it is amusing to see Microsoft then kind of double back on that and look at the landscape that they've kind of created accidentally in front of them and been like, okay, what can we do about this? Let's tweet that beating a game on the lowest difficulty is still beating the game, and then instantly get ratioed by all the bro gamers that you have created.
Well, I mean, Microsoft is interesting because they've done like a full 180, and now they're the ones who are releasing all this like Pride merch and gaming for everyone and accessibility and inclusion, and it's on one hand really, really great, and it really excites me, and I'm really happy that it's happening. But I find it really hard to separate them from that bro culture that they created. So it's really hard kind of getting into that mindset of like, Microsoft's a thing that I love now, that I celebrate now, and I'm trying to. But in the back of my mind, there's still just this like, that this is where they came from kind of feeling.
The toxic culture had to start somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really interesting though, because like, I feel like I came into the industry and started paying attention to stuff pretty late, but I didn't really find myself exposed to much of that like intentional cultivating of bro culture. Like I feel like Microsoft hasn't. It's not like they've been progressive so much as quiet on these sorts of issues for a good decade now. I don't know. Like I think it's interesting that they're starting to now turn about, I suppose. But it's definitely been a while, right, since they kind of partnered with Mountain Dew or whatever.
It's definitely been a long while since you got like Halo codes on the undercap of your Mountain Dew bottle.
I remember that actually. Yeah.
I'm not sure how many people here remember like 90s gaming magazines, but things have changed a lot since then. And the companies that have made it have kind of had to face up to the fact that they're now having to fight back against cultures that they started in the first place.
But good. I mean, I think it's an overall positive point. They're definitely moving in the right direction.
Yeah,
it's exciting to see it.
Yeah.
I just find it funny that Microsoft created Gamerscore, like the literal metric to measure get good.
God.
And now they're in this direction.
I remember when the greatest thing in the world for a gamer was having the elite gamer score, and the joke that like you'd close your Xbox or you'd never use your Microsoft account the moment you got that. It's just like,
well, you'd hope to get that before it red rings.
Yeah, I could never use my Xbox again, or else I'll stop being elite. But speaking of Microsoft, and specifically speaking of Halo, the announcer from Halo not only went on to in a online thing, a video, not only said trans rights, but went into this long, wonderful talk about trans rights, and it was honestly beautiful. And he's in his 70s, proving that age doesn't matter in these things. If you are a good person, you're a good person. So that was kind of nice, and it's like, you know what? There's been someone good in this the whole time, and that's kind of wonderful.
That reminds me of last year when it was David Hayter doing a similar thing. You know, the voice of Snake in Metal Gear Solid, very happily saying in his Snake voice, no less. I don't know, these voice actors being vocal about things like this, it has a very emotional tie into a lot of people's like childhoods of playing games, and it's really, really lovely to see.
Yeah, these are the voices that made our childhoods, that made our adolescence, and when you hear them saying bad stuff, you just don't. But when you hear them saying good stuff, you suddenly feel very vindicated in your love of these media. All right, let's jump onto a couple of rough ones before we move on. Hogwarts Legacy.
I was gonna say that's a really nice transition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when it comes to knowing about really nice transitions here, we're all in on it.
You've all got it.
I've got the flag. I have to say these things. It's in the contract. What I. So Hogwarts Legacy. So who wants to talk about this one? Who knows more about it? I tend to stay away from all the HP stuff.
Where do we even start? No. I've forgotten most of it, I'm sure. I remember the it was the lead dev on the project, right? Or the director or something.
You got to do the series of events that starts with like JK being transphobic, group making Hogwarts Legacy being we will distance ourselves from her. We don't want anything to do with this. And for a time, there was peace in the realm. People were like, I can play this game. They've distanced themselves from JK. Everything's okay. And then, the lead designer.
Yeah.
What was it again? Was it a podcast, a YouTube channel?
It was a YouTube channel. So the lead designer used to, I'm not sure about that now, used to run anti-social justice website and kept that going for a long time. And when you combine this with the reason why a lot of people don't feel comfortable supporting Harry Potter stuff anymore, the real
kicker was when these articles came out, he gave an interview and said that he explicitly mentioned this YouTube channel in his job interview, and they still hired him. Like they fully knew about it, and he was proud enough to tell them about it, and they just went and hired him, which is really something. But
he had a video up about in support of Gamergate. Like the titles are enough, right, for you to be like, I am having second thoughts about this.
Well, that was it. It wasn't like this is some embarrassing stuff I did way in my past 10 years ago. This was like recent years.
Great.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff in there. Just Google it. There's a big article up there from Kotaku. There's a lot of historic stuff, but in general, this person was known to be a problem, and yet they were still hired as the lead designer to work on an IP that is in itself known to be a problem. So we'll move on from that one.
Well, real quick, sorry. Like, I think he, again, I forget the details, but I think he left the project very soon after it was announced that I think you could untie, voice from body type. They mentioned this, that they mentioned it was going to be like a trans-friendly character creator, and then he immediately jumped ship from the game. I think this is right. Or at least it was very conveniently timed. Anyway, it adds up.
Yep. Next one is a bit of a tricky one, but because it's so new restrictions are reportedly coming through, being put in place for Chinese developers about what is acceptable content to go into games. These are cracking down on the sort of content in general, and this was reported in.
This was reported this morning.
Yeah, this was very, very recent. Let me find the specific quote.
It was GameIndustry.biz.
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't a good one. Let's just try to find it.
It's summed up by the idea of them saying that game media is no longer something that is just pure entertainment, but actually carries other ideas into it, and as such, they wish to see a restriction of certain things, such as morally gray areas. They don't like games where you can be good or bad. They just want good, and that's all to worry about.
So I'll quote the article quickly. So this is all through a memo that was handed through. So the statement at the state of this is still a bit up in the air. Explains that titles featuring queer romance and effeminate males are not likely to be approved from licensing. If regulators can't tell the character's gender immediately, the setting of characters could be considered problematic and red flags will be raised.
Now, I'm hoping that by the time this airs, it comes out that was what we are reading right now is just like a little bit of hyperbole, right? That everything is still okay, but still, it happened during this year, so we have to talk about it.
Yeah, the wonderful folks at PAX were happy to give us a little bit of extra time just to catch up on recent news to make sure that everything was good. Thank you very much to the PAX team for this, by the way, because we know it was asking a lot. But yeah, that one was very recent, and if that is true, if that does come down as true, it could affect the video game market selling to China, which could affect some of the largest video game companies, many of whom have primary shareholders in China. So we will see how it goes, because I believe that's Epic and a bunch of other places.
Epic is no longer, they had to depart some of the shares, but Riot itself is still an issue. The other thing to consider is large games that are coming out of China, things like Genshin Impact, which are played around the world, and quite frankly, there are a lot of characters in that game that would fall into the slightly effeminate category that I immediately go, oh, that's a problem. But we don't see every game that's developed in China because they end up being very kind of insular for a lot of those. But we see some great stuff coming out, and it would be a shame that devs couldn't properly show off their creative ideas in their products.
Conforming to specific sets of values has never been fantastic for queer developers or queer media.
I don't expect this to affect as many companies as people on Twitter and Reddit seem to be fearing. Like, I think a lot of Chinese gamers are already having to use VPNs to access foreign games because Steam, as far as I'm aware, isn't even available in mainland China. Generally, we have things, like World of Warcraft has issues with, showing skeletons and blood, I think, and there are, regional variants for China that are specifically made, but often, I don't think this is going to specifically change things too much. It's mostly just going to be the mobile games in particular, things that are trying to cross over to China and capture that as a market officially, and then games coming out of China as well.
Yep. We'll move forward. We've still got lots to cover. So we are now moving on to Epic, and specifically a situation that happened during Pride Month. Who wants to take this one?
Absolutely no fun.
Absolutely. Okay.
I'll take this. I mean, it was the trial, right? Epic's sued Apple.
Not that one. Not that.
Oh God, there's more?
There's multiple Epic ones in here. So this one was specifically about one of their Fortnite personalities who was caught out making some homophobic comments, as some people do. And this was during Pride Month, and they were banned for a total of 90 minutes.
It was a couple of hours at most.
A couple of hours?
It was almost nothing.
Yeah. That was... If a company sees this sort of stuff and doesn't act, or acts in a very minor way, that is tacit approval from the company, as far as I see it.
They made the creator give an apology, but the apology was, it's against my religion, and that's why I said it. I'm sorry if anyone got offended. So,
I'm sorry you were offended by the terrible things I said. Wow.
But what's really interesting to me there was I heard people saying, this kid is making like $1 million a month through creating content for Fortnite. And they were just a kid, right? Like, they were genuinely young. Like, that doesn't even slightly exclude what they said, but I feel like maybe someone needs to be paying attention to what companies are allowing children to do and create, and how they're building these communities where, I don't know, it all just feels very, very icky to me.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. Those things always are. But we will move on to... Oh God! So we were speaking about Epic. So the Epic versus Apple case that happened, that was resolved not too recently, pretty recently.
Temporarily, I think.
Temporarily, I'm not sure. I think I can't remember how it was put, but it was like if whoever bet that both sides would lose, won on that one. That one. Specifically when at a point relatively early on in the trial, Apple went after Epic because Epic had started hosting the itch.io launcher within its platform. It wasn't hosting the games. It wasn't anything else like that. It was just hosting the launcher. So it was essentially the same as Steam hosting the Origin launcher. Like, that was all. And it went after itch for having unspeakable games. A term that has been kind of adopted among certain indie developers.
I love my existence being unspeakable content. That's great.
Yeah, and predominantly it was queer content they were talking about, queer adult content that they were talking about. They were talking about some cis heterosexual stuff, I think, as well. But in general, it was like...
It was adult content in general.
Yeah.
It was specifically adult content.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think my favorite thing about that was the quote of, "We found hundreds of adult games on your service," and everyone's like, "You found hundreds?
Only
you
hundreds?
Were not looking hard enough, my dude.
Try
There's
harder."
so much."
Here in this house, we endorse itch.io as a gaming platform. Buy your games from itch.io. If someone has their games as pay what you want, please tip them. But yes, the term unspeakable games has now been adopted, especially amongst queer developers who often see their work as unspeakable by a lot of platforms. For example, I remember early on Epic said that they would never hold visual novels or anything else like that because discussions on sexuality or gender could be considered adult, so that they would never host it. So
that's kind of the thing, right? Like the game that Epic actually cited as unspeakable was something like genuinely pretty scandalous from memory, but it was, I think, straight. Like I think it was like a cishet kind of porn game. But the concern was that you would jump from, like banning adult games with sex and smut to banning queer games because there is a huge overlap, but also, often once the porn is cut, it's the other controversial content, such as queerness, that's the next to go.
It's also because a lot of queer content is just categorized as being adult content, even if it isn't adult content.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because it's adult themes.
Because we talk about gender and we talk about sexuality, and it's really hard not to at times.
I mean, it's the same thing as like two women kiss in a Disney thing, right? It's like political, but if like a straight couple kisses, it's, whatever. Kids can see that. It's fine. So it's I don't know. It's just this weird double standard.
Yeah, and we've seen it for far, far too long. But yeah, so unspeakable games, if you want to use that term for your own content, please do so. It's an awesome term. I consider my work unspeakable, and I know a bunch of other devs who do too.
God, I sat too long looking at the genre section when I was submitting my game to PAX, and I wrote so many things. I should have just written unspeakable. That would have solved my problem.
Hey PAX, next time we do a physical one, please have a section in the indie area that's just unspeakable games. That is my recommendation.
The Unspeakable Games Lounge.
Yeah, because that's. I mean, they pretty much had one there with Blushbox, I think it was years ago, and that was amazing. Yeah, okay. Let's move on. Riot recording all voice comms in Valorant to try and catch abuse. Did we want to do that one? I think Faye had that one.
It's just, I had it. It's an interesting situation because you have the same thing with this where they're trying to catch people who are, racist and sexist and homophobic by always recording so that if someone reports, they can go back over the audio and check it out, right? This is very similar to what Ubisoft did like 2 years ago with as soon as someone says a slur in chat, they just auto get banned. And it's a great step forward. But part of me looks at both Riot and Ubisoft, who are in the news for, once again, terrible working conditions. And you go, thank you for this, but can you fix that, please? It's just conflicting.
I think it's still important to celebrate steps like this because I know a lot of people who are at Riot and Ubisoft and all of these other terrible companies are the people, the people like us, they're marginalized groups. They're the ones who are also suffering from the treatment, but they're the ones who are making these decisions.
Yeah,
it's not.
Yeah,
it's not the higher ups.
As always, we will usually fall on the side of the devs. Management is usually the one making the terrible decisions, and they're usually the ones that encourage bad shit to happen, be it intentionally or not. But yeah, so it happens. All right. The Melbourne Queer Games Festival is on right now, so that's kind of awesome. For those who haven't checked it out, every year Melbourne's Queer Games Festival is there. It takes games from all over the world, and it's generally pretty awesome. So that's just a general nice thing to include. So yeah, if you make games and you're queer, put it in next year so that we can play it, because it's a really good marketing opportunity as well for queer devs. Oh, this is a fun one. I always like talking about this one. The Queer Games Bundle happened this year. This was organized by some really wonderful indie devs, and it was essentially a way to bring to the attention that a lot of the queer devs in the industry are making their work for passion and not for money. That they can't survive making games. And that's kind of a problem, is that there are very few positions where someone can make even a minimum wage living from making games. So the goal for it was set very loftily, which was totally fine. The idea was, I think, to try and give every single dev in there like $50,000 if they could, if it reached the top. By the end of it, they were able to pay, I think, around $700 or $800 for 200 developers.
It was quite a bit. It might have been more than that. Yeah, I think it was. There were like 200 developers. Yes, you each got like 0.5%, but that added up quickly because this came right on the tail of Epic calling it unspeakable. So, maybe it was Apple. Who even knows? But yeah, there was a lot of attention. It was interesting because the bundle itself didn't actually allow adult content. I'm not sure if that was a deliberate decision or just them copy pasting the description from the previous itch version.
Yeah, so the whole thing about bundles is a bit tricky because there is no way for someone who buys that bundle to opt out of adult content. You either get everything or you don't. And I was part of the bundle, and it really helped because that money helped me make my game. I wouldn't be able to afford to have made my game if I didn't have that. And it was pretty close to about $700, which I know people who are in that who live in Brazil, and that is months of living expenses over there. For me, I was able to pay off all my game artists. Like, it adds up. But I think it sold, something like 4,000 copies.
It was quite a lot, yeah.
Yeah. It did it both as a pay what you want, anything above like $10, and one that was 60, and it was about even split revenue wise between those two. But yeah, it was a really interesting example of funding and community support and encouraging people to look at indie games and go, hey, I should pay for that. Because that was someone's love and someone's effort and probably someone's money has gone into making that thing. And y'all should support indie devs because, paying $100 for a AAA game is great. But paying $10 for an indie game is also pretty great if that's all they're charging. So yeah, and that in turn has funneled off. So the structure of that bundle has actually been the basis for a bunch of other bundles to start now. So there's one recently for transgender developers. There was a bunch of other ones, but yeah, the footwork that was put into it by the Queer Game Bundle developers has meant that other indie devs can follow suit. Which
the format of like a $10 pay what you want and then a $60 version, that was, I think, first done by it was at least first done by the alternate Cyberpunk bundle that came out this year or last year. I think they were the ones who.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, might have been done before then.
Yep. While we're on to that, let's talk about wholesome games. I think Elliot, you were going to talk about that one.
Oh yeah, this one isn't really explicitly queer. I just thought it's a really interesting case study. We've had over the past few years, a bunch of developers have sort of gotten together under the banner of like wholesome games, and the idea is they basically do like a Nintendo Direct. It's sort of like a bunch of trailers put together of all of these games which are wholesome. And I forget exactly the definition they used for that, but they posted a little infographic a while back that was like, like non-violent, covers queerness, has farming. It was like 4 things, and if you have 2 of them, it's classified as wholesome, and it created quite a bit of backlash at the time. And I think, understandably, there's a lot of discussion to be had about expecting queer developers, especially, to fit inside the definition of wholesome, especially given everything we've mentioned about, unspeakableness.
Yeah.
But I also know, I know some of the people who are running it, and they are genuinely wonderful people. I just wanted to highlight how kind of cool it is that these small developers, a lot of whom are queer themselves, how they've pulled together this sort of way of uplifting a lot of developers who are
Awesome.
also marginalized.
Awesome. We have to rush through the next chunk because we've only got
Please,
about
yeah,
10 minutes left, and we're going to talk about representation. So we're going to do each of these a minute each. So let's start with the only real bad one on the list, Mass Effect Legend.
Even then,
Yeah, sorry.
Even then, it's not that bad. It's not all bad.
Yeah. So Mass Effect Legendary Edition came out during Pride Month, and they didn't put back all the stripped out queer romances that originally were taken out of the original game. So these were things like romances with Tali, Jack. Pretty much all of them had queer romances voiced and ready to go, and then management decisions because of stuff that came out of Fox News meant that they didn't put them in. But a lot of people were hoping that because of the Legendary Edition, they'd put those back in. But no, they took out some butt shots and moved on with their lives. So next, Life is Strange.
Can we just for a second just linger, because
Quickly.
I think it's important to say that, like, there's a lot of stuff that they didn't put in that they shouldn't have put in, and a lot of people were really disappointed. But it was also a really formative series for a lot of people because there was queer representation in there.
Yeah.
And it wasn't Pride Month; it came out the month before.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I think it's still important to note it as like a kind of milestone in queer representation in games that a lot of people were excited to play through again, even if it was disappointing that there was stuff that could have been there that wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know the previous Mass Effect, they ended up patching in stuff. Like, I remember there was something about dead naming a trans person, and there was kind of an outcry, and they ended up patching that stuff in. So it's interesting they didn't do that here, but I also don't think it's,
Yeah.
I think a lot of us too replayed the Legendary Edition and reflected back on our experience playing Mass Effect 10 years, whatever ago, and we're like, oh, that makes sense. A lot of personal relations down the line.
Yes, but BioWare games show up a lot in these panels, so we usually talk about them at least once. Life is Strange, Jess.
Yes, Life is Strange is the best. The Life is Strange series is the best. There are two kind of romance options in the newest one. One of them is Steph, one of them is Ryan. Ryan's like fine, but Steph is amazing. And is in all the marketing material and stuff, and the game is not even a little bit shying away from being super queer. And Steph is like super cool, and she's like punk rock, and she does like live action role playing on the weekends, so she's like the dream girl. And I'm like high key in love with her, and yeah, it's amazing.
Cool. Boyfriend Dungeon. God, can we have like 20 minutes to talk about Boyfriend Dungeon?
No.
No, okay.
We don't have time.
Yep, okay. Really got good representation. Got judged far too harshly for things that a lot of other games, a lot of big devs and big companies don't generally get judged on, i.e. content warnings and stuff like that. Got held to a very high standard, but a lot of people really, really love that game, and that is awesome. So, and from what I understand, it is a very queer game. So, cool. Rainbow Six got a trans character. That's awesome. Ubisoft is still a garbage fire of a company.
Also, it kind of sucks that, like, I don't want that kind of trans rep, like a fucking special ops agent. I don't know what kind of war crime she's doing, but it's not one of the fun ones. I'm not into it.
I know one of the people who were like talking to the devs about that one and helping them create that character. It's very much that kind of person. So people who say that's unrealistic, it's like trans people were making this character. So like, don't assume all trans people are the same folks. We're all very different.
No.
Yeah. Bug Snacks. Go.
Yeah, Bug Snacks is weirdly the queerest game I played all year. Came out at the end of last year, and it has
Bug Snacks is great.
Yeah, it has like a main queer like protagonist, well not playable character, but protagonist, and like her wife, and then there's another character that's non-binary, and then there's also another couple that's like gay men, and yeah, it's like super gay, super queer.
I'd also say Bugsnax is a really good example of having those kind of sexuality themes without being like sexual in any way. Like it's basically Muppets. It's like, what if they let Bert and Ernie just say, yes, we are married, but there's also they're eating bugs at the same time. That's a Bugsnax.
But bugs that then turn them into food, like it's an extra layer.
Yeah.
But yes.
Yep. And it does kind of go horrific at times, like really, really dark. But first part, as long as you pull the controller away from the kids before you get to it, it's very kid friendly.
Yeah. Amazing. Everyone should play Bugsnax.
Okay, I'm probably going to get the name wrong, but Lady Dimitrescu from Resident Evil. As the resident monster lover, big thumbs up. There's a lot of queerness going on there. It's not stated, but it's obvious. We all know this. We finally had a glorious, mature woman as a character, and everyone was very, very into her. And she was 9 feet tall, which I'm generally in like the going after hundreds of feet tall, but you know I'll set my standards low here. Very good. Some questionable stuff about what we judge, like what is acceptably hot and what isn't, but that's a whole other discussion. I'll do a panel on monster love one day, and we'll go from there. But that's good. Next up, Psychonauts 2.
Yeah, Psychonauts 2 also hit me out of nowhere. I didn't expect it. There's like a whole level that's based on the relationship between these two dudes, and it like hints that they're gay and kind of together before that, but it doesn't really go into it. And then suddenly there's like a big thing dedicated to like their marriage, and like it's a whole emotional journey, and it's beautiful.
It's so beautiful. Like it just blew me away. As you said, it came out of nowhere, and I was so happy with it.
Sorry, we're trying not to spoil it for Elliot. In general, yeah, good. In general, Psychonauts 2, very good. Does representation very well. Mental health, queer stuff, good. We like that one very much. And it's on Game Pass, so that's cool. Empire of Sin.
Yeah, it was just like this game about being a gangster and like doing crime well, and it had a canonically kind of at least attracted to women character that you can play as, and there's part of her story that's dedicated to like their romantic past, and it would just also surprised me, which is kind of cool.
Yep, cool. Get in the Car, Loser. We haven't all really had a chance to play that. I think I've clocked in like 5 minutes. I think Jam's got like 45 in that one. But it is made by by Christine Love, who did Lady Killer in a Bind. It's very fun so far. Give it a shot, see how it goes. Because
it's also free. You can give money for DLC add-on, but yeah, fundamentally it's free on Steam.
It is pay what you want, and as we said, if you like it, pay for it. And finally, Deltarune 2. Take it away, Faye.
I just smashed through it today, just in time for this. It's just nice to see some nice, happy, like, discovering of gay relationships within it. There's also the main character gets referenced with non-binary pronouns. This is partially because the creator wants people to infuse this character with themselves, right? So they're kind of a blank slate. But regardless, when they talk about the character you're playing, they use non-binary pronouns, which is a nice thing to see. Also, I just had a fun time.
The memes are amazing. They're just beautiful. And we managed to knock it out. Okay, so we've got a couple of minutes. Let's finalize this. Let's all go through. Tell us where folks can find you. Jam.
You can find me not in a whole lot of places yet, but hit me up on Twitter at Jammer. I'm currently about to start writing for Games Hub, which is a lovely new Australian games site that just launched something like 2 days ago. So check them out. Yeah.
Faye.
You can find me on Twitter at Callie Ransom, or you can just Google my name, Fae Daunt. It turns up for like the first 4 pages. It's upsetting at this point. Support me on Twitter for the game I'm putting together. Also, just a shout out for Slime VR, independent, full body tracking, open source technology. Just Google it and come support them. It's cool, low cost VR for everyone.
Elliot.
I am at Elliot Herriman on Twitter.com. I'm going to be launching some very exciting stuff in October and December that I legally cannot talk about, but come hang out on Twitter and I will scream about it as soon as I am contractually able to.
We love those NDAs around here. Jess.
Yeah, you can also find me on Twitter. I am at ZammitJess. You can also find a bunch of the stuff that I do through representme.charity. So Represent Me is an organization that I'm a director of, which is like a not-for-profit working for increasing, diversity in the games industry and supporting marginalized developers and players. And you can also find my writing, a lot of my writing I do at player2.net.au. So yeah, a bunch of places.
Awesome. And I am NB Kaiju on Twitter. I write blogs about stuff and queer games and stuff. Yeah. Digital diversity. I run a project called Digital Diversity, which interviews and highlights queer devs in the industry, which is why I usually run these sorts of things these days. I also am, as of recording, 23 days away from releasing Kaiju Noir, which is a giant monster mystery visual novel full of queer giant monsters. And I'm very much excited to that first full game. But yeah, we'll have the bios thing. Follow everyone here. Tell us what you think. If there's anything you want us to talk about, let us know. We will be back next year, hopefully in person. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to the awesome folks at PAX for running this. It was in a rush, and has been done very well. Yeah, thank you all very much. This is the State of Queer. Go, if you are queer, be proud of yourselves. Go play games. Go support people in the industry. And don't stop talking about games. We love people talking about games. It's why we're all here. So, stay safe, everyone. Look after yourselves. Bye.